Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
Welcome to Books That Make You. We're talking about books that make you fall into a speculative new world. Speculative fiction. It's one that imagines a different world. You find it a lot in sci-fi and fantasy, and it's often a result of asking, what if? What if Hitler hadn't committed suicide? What if the USA lost the space race? What if dinosaurs survived in the center of the earth? Or what if ancient myths were real and the city of Los Angeles housed a portal to the Aztec world of the dead? Our guest today has created an entire alternate version of Los Angeles. It's similar in many ways to the way it really is. I mean, it's Los Angeles, but he adds a dark underbelly compiled of real mythology and lore, actual history, and even Hollywood screen legends. Sean Patrick Traver is the author of Gravesend, Red Witch, Wraith Ladies Who Lunch, and his newest novella is The Fat Lady Sings, Bruja Chica, The Education of a Witch, and it is a Temple, Tree, and Tower, book one. Did I get that right, Sean?
Yes, you did. Yeah, that's great. Got a lot of title.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
Now, your world, like we were talking about, uses all these different legends and lore and mythology. One of the things that I've always found fascinating is that with so many different cultures, religions, people from different times and places even, we all have similar myths. What are your thoughts on that? Why is there that similarity?
Well, I think mythology in general, I think all myths have validity in that they're expressions of human needs and human longings. So I think that over time, different cultures, the human nature remains what it is across cultures, and we have embodied these ideas, the sum total of our experience in these archetypes.
And do you feel that has some kernel of truth then, because of the fact that there's so much similarity?
Absolutely. I think they all have validity in that they're all expressions of something that can't fully be expressed. So they've just taken different forms in different cultures all around the world. But they often myths syncretize across cultures. It's in voodoo particularly, the old gods, the African gods, are syncretized with Catholic saints sometimes. In a very Catholic and repressive country, for these practices to continue to go on. That's how the similarities were found in the iconography and the imagery, and they were understood to stand in for archetypes other than the officially sanctioned ones.
That's so fascinating. And in one of your books, Red Witch, there's an actual portal to the afterlife, to the Aztec world of the dead. What kind of things did you find when researching that were interesting or that were similar to other myths and legends?
Well, Aztec mythology is really particularly fascinating. It's got figures with extremely long names. I really like big words, so that's always fun for me. In terms of similarities in mythology, well, I was fascinated by the similarities with the underworld mythology too, particularly the classical world, and I really wanted my gods to behave in the manner of classical gods, so I've done a lot of research in that area as well. Yeah, I think it's a really fascinating subject.
Yeah. Well, and it reminds me, too, of Greek mythology or even Roman mythology, this idea of an afterlife and people or gods or, deities controlling it is just a really... Yeah.
The underworld where people go and they just sort of linger on as shades without any purpose. It's a very frustrating sort of vision of the afterlife, but I find it really compelling, too.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that I like about your writing, too, is you've taken a lot of these legends and lore and created almost like your own universe set in Los Angeles.
That's the goal.
Yeah, tell us about your world. Tell us how you created that, and what are the rules of your world in Los Angeles in your writings?
Wow, that's a big question. Broadly, it is based in Aztec mythology. It started with this idea of a hole in the sky located above Los Angeles that was created there more than 1,000 years ago by a ritual sacrifice. And over time, different structures have replaced it. At one time, there was a temple on the site. The temple was torn down, and a tree grew to replace it, and only a local group of initiates over time knew the location and how to ascend the tree and find the hole in the sky again. And eventually, at the start of the 20th century, the tree was cut down as well, and a building was erected to rise up and enclose this portal. So that's where the name the Temple, Tree, and Tower series comes from, and that is the ultimate basis of the entire series.
And so then all of the books, or all of your books, come at that from a different angle. Like, it's not always the same characters, right? But they exist in this world where there is this portal in the sky, right?
Exactly. Yeah, they all exist in the same world, and their stories often overlap, but they're all on different trajectories of their own, and they all have different experiences of that portal and how to find it and how to use it.
It reminds me a lot of Stephen King. We were talking about this earlier, and even Castle Rock, which aired not too long ago. How that was basically lots of his stories, his characters, his premises, because he created in nearly every King book, it's the same type of universe. It's just a different story that's set within it.
Exactly. And Stephen King is an enormous influence. I've been reading Stephen King since I was 8 years old. He's, one of my absolute favorites. So that kind of thing is always very much in mind when I'm writing. I've always wanted to create an overlapping, interlocking world like that, where different stories, different characters can come and go. They can have different types of adventures. They can have different types of experiences, and they're all tied together by a central theme.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And speaking of your characters, one of the things that really draws in any reader, and especially me when I'm reading your writing, are the characters. So we have Ingrid Redstone, for example, in Red Witch, and she's trying to get into this portal, and she actually succeeds. Can you talk a little bit about that character and the characters she meets on the other side?
Yeah, absolutely. Ingrid Redstone is a silent film star and an occultist, a witch who goes searching for this hole in the sky. She's part of a magical order at the start of the 20th century. And in 1910, she steals a secret map from the magical order that hasn't been able to figure out what to do with it. And she discovers the hole in the sky for herself and decides to see what she can make of this. She ends up having an affair, essentially, with the Aztec god of dead, in the manner of Zeus and all the classical gods. It was once a common motif, mortals having affairs with the gods. So, and Ingrid is really intrigued by being part of that lineage. And she both falls in love and wants to see how she can manipulate the king of the dead.
And does she succeed?
Oh, she sort of succeeds. She has a lot of trouble along the way. She makes a huge mess of things, and she tries to make amends where she can. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't.
Another character I fell in love with from the beginning. Well, I should say Gravesend. That was my introduction to you, and that was your first book as well.
That was the first book.
It starts off with this incredible scene with a young girl saving a cat, but then we find out the cat isn't necessarily what it seems. Can you just talk a little bit about Gravesend and how when you were writing that, and because that was the foray, that was kind of like you setting everything up. One, did you think that this would become a whole world or a whole universe? And tell me a little bit about, just the setup and the premise and the writing process that you went through when you were creating that.
Yeah, absolutely. At the time I started it, I didn't know that it would necessarily become an entire series, although I knew all this material. I knew all these stories. It does start with Tom Delgado and Leah. Tom is a century-old necromancer who currently lives in the body of a black cat. He's evaded death all these years by hiding out in the succession of cats. And he meets a young orphan. That's the beginning of Gravesend. And he decides that he's going to train her as a witch. And it's also where my newest book picks up. There's there's a 10-year gap between the prologue in Gravesend and the main body of the action. And my newest series of novellas called Bruja Chica, The Education of a Witch, fills in that 10-year gap. So it's all about the particular relationship between Tom and Leah.
Wonderful. And so then that's the reason for the Temple, Tree, and Tower. That's the series.
Exactly. That's how they tied together there, yeah. So, yeah, she's being prepared to be somebody who can confront the secrets of the hole in the sky. At the start of the 21st century, just the same as Ingrid was attempting to find it at the start of the 20th century.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So time hopping as well.
Right.
And that is one of the central seeds behind when somebody discovers the hole in the sky and they go through into the land of the dead, that exists outside of time. So Ingrid was the first to discover that from that point of view, she can come back out at any point she likes.
Mm.
So she's free to explore history throughout here in Los Angeles. She can come back into any time period she wants and see what's going on.
And you did a lot of research on Los Angeles history. Can you talk about some of the, like, what's the craziest or the most interesting thing that you uncovered that the average person might not know?
There are a lot of crazy things in Los Angeles. Errol Flynn and Charlie Chaplin used to race horses down Hollywood Boulevard, which inspired a scene in Red Witch. That's a particularly crazy one. I understand. Yeah. Right outside Musso and Frank's restaurant. Apparently that was, they would place bets and see, who the loser had to buy drinks.
That's hilarious. And I know you have like Dorothy Parker and Alfred Hitchcock and some other screen legends in your writings too, that it seems like they make almost like cameo appearances, right?
Yeah. Dorothy Parker did live here in Los Angeles. She worked on a movie with Alfred Hitchcock, and they both play a small role in Red Witch. Dorothy Parker is a kind of recurring character throughout that book. And she's just a lot of fun to read and research. Everything about her is endlessly interesting.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you write very interesting female characters as well. And so I want to touch on Wraith Ladies Who Lunch, because this is still another one of your books. It's a novella. And the premise for this, again, it's just so fascinating. It's essentially two spirits. One is of a mummy who actually once resided at LACMA, the Los Angeles Museum of Art, and the ghost of a Victorian spirit, and they're earthbound. And so they don't know what else to do, so every once in a while they get together and they have lunch at the Cheesecake Factory. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that is the brief pitch. They're a pair of bored ghosts who have nothing better to do with their afterlife than hang out at the Cheesecake Factory and other places and pretend to order drinks. The mummy's name is Ta Senet Netor. She is based on an actual mummy who has for years been on display at LACMA. She's not right now as they're remodeling the gallery. She's currently on display at the Vincent Price Art Museum on the other side of town. And I understand she's going to be coming back to LACMA, so I'm looking forward to that.
Oh.
But, it was, kind of a shock that they were removing her from display right as I was releasing this novella all about her. So I found that a little frustrating, but, that's sometimes the way things go.
Right. Well, you did get the novella out right before she was moved, so maybe that was all part of the plan.
And maybe so, yeah. I kind of like the idea that maybe she wanted a story told to commemorate her time there. Yeah. And I believe she is coming back, so, I'm looking forward to seeing her again.
And you have gone to visit her. You've seen her. And do you feel, too, that when you were there at LACMA that you were being inspired, or how did that feel as a writer to be right there looking at the remains of somebody and you're weaving this tale about them?
It was an unusual experience. It definitely gave me a different sense of responsibility because she wasn't a famous person. She wasn't a queen. She wasn't royalty. She was a kind of a middle-class mummy. But I definitely felt the responsibility to get as much right about who she actually was as I could. And she was a sistrum player. Sistrum is kind of a ceremonial musical instrument used in rituals. It's kind of like a tambourine. It's not a very difficult instrument to play necessarily. So she was sort of a dancer, a temple. Her official title was the songstress of Amun. And I know there was a CT scan done on her in the 80s, so we have some evidence of what might have caused her death. So I tried to factor that into my portrayal of her in the story. And I was just really fascinated by the idea of what somebody's perspective might be who was nearly 3,000 years old, looking at contemporary Los Angeles. And I think she'd be pretty overwhelmed. Because I've been here my entire life and I'm pretty overwhelmed.
I was going to say, modern day people are overwhelmed in Los Angeles. So that's fantastic. Why the Cheesecake Factory?
Because it's a funny name. That's a place to start. And also, one of the rules of the story is that the ghosts can only travel as far from their remains as a person could reasonably walk. And the mummy is located at Lachma, which is, they're off Wilshire. And the other ghost, Christabel, is a Victorian ghost. She's attached to a piece of mourning jewelry, which is on sale at an antique store up on Melrose Avenue. And there just happens to be a Cheesecake Factory in the overlapping range. You can walk from either of those places to that Cheesecake Factory there at the road. So, between it being a silly name and geographically convenient, that's kind of how that came to pass.
And that's something that interests me, too, is this idea that spirits are bound to this realm because of an artifact or something physical that keeps them here. And that's like a reoccurring theme as well. You want to, I don't know, just kind of talk about that a little bit? And
yeah, absolutely. It is a recurring theme. It's partially an artifact, a piece of their physical remains, coupled with their name. It has their name written on it, and it's the name that binds the personality that they remember. And they slowly come to realize this over time, and it's part of the plot in Wraith Lady's Lunch, but it's also a factor in Gravesend and Red Witch. The idea that to name something is to know it, to have power over it, to claim it. So my magicians and my ghosts are really cautious about giving away their names or using real names sometimes. And there are some spells where they are required to use their real names because they would forget who they are if they tried to lie. They would lose that comes up in Red Witch. Ingrid is kind of bound to be who she is, even when it's inconvenient. Otherwise, under certain circumstances, she would lose her memory.
And that's reminiscent too of even God, even Yahweh. Like the whole thing is that humans are not supposed to know the name of God because that gives power over it.
It's about names for a lot of spiritual and mythological traditions.
And it rings true of the idea that, spirits sometimes haunt houses because that's where they lived, or they could haunt a car or an artifact, like you were talking about a piece of jewelry. So we do have that as well within our collective consciousness.
Yeah, I like the idea of haunted objects. I've always found that really fascinating. The idea that a spirit could be attached to something, animating something that, if something looks alive, maybe it is, because maybe there's a ghost animating it.
So let's talk a little bit more about your latest book, The Fat Lady Sings. So this is one of, like, how many books do you see in this series? Is this never ending? Do you know where it's going, or is it, are you just, are we going along on this ride and it could go in a million different directions?
This particular part of the series is potentially never-ending. I may do other books in the series, but this particular part, called Bruja Chica, The Education of a Witch, is a series of 8 novellas. The first one just came out last week. That one's called The Fat Lady Sings. The second one is going to be coming out shortly. It's called Secret Garden. And, it's something in the spirit of Stephen King's Green Mile series, a series of novellas that he put out a while back. And, I think a novella is a fun form. It's a little bit more substantive than a short story. It's a little more to bite into, but it's not quite the same commitment as a long novel for either the reader or the writer. It's a fun form to work in. So we're planning on doing 7 more of these.
And the thing, too, is if you created one book with 7 novellas, that would probably feel too heavy, too much. So you're making it almost like a serial so that people can digest it.
It's like a series of TV. It's episodic. It's going to be 8 episodes in total. And they'll each take about an hour to read. So, it's, binge watching in a book.
Yeah, and perfect for traveling or on the beach over the holidays.
That's the idea.
Now, you're also in a recently released anthology, too, which I think is something that every truck driver needs to read, right? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And there is an audiobook version of it coming out, which is perfect for truck drivers. It's called 18 Wheels of Science Fiction. It's science fiction themed trucking stories, basically. And I'm really excited to be in it. There's some wonderful people in it alongside me. Lisa Morgan, who I work with. Eric Miller is the editor. Yeah, we just had a signing the other day. I'm really completely overwhelmed to begin it. It's a really fun book, and I really hope people will check it out.
Can you tell us a little bit about the story that you contributed?
Yeah, my story is called Indica Asterion and the Wizard of Ozymandias. It's basically about a space archaeologist who steals an alien artifact rather than let it fall into the hands of a corrupt government.
Ooh, nice. I like it.
Yeah, and it's also fun. It's got a sense of humor. It's, yeah.
Yeah, and I do love that about your writing, too. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek, and there's humor involved as well, which is always fun.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a necessary part. Yeah. I almost don't believe in anything that's either entirely serious or entirely humorous. You know what I mean? Life is a constant mixture of both.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to try to intertwine them a bit.
Now, you mentioned where you work. Can we talk about that? Because you have one of the most fascinating jobs in the world, and one of the most unique jobs as well, because there aren't a lot of places like where you work around anymore.
No, they're not. Yeah, it's going to be just kind of an anachronistic job. I work at a used bookstore. It's just a classic used bookstore. We specialize in literature and the arts, so it's an amazing research tool for me. In addition to being where I make a big chunk of my living. I got involved with the Horror Writers Association through my association with the bookstore. It's just been a wonderful place for me.
And it's the Iliad bookstore, which
the Iliad bookstore in North Hollywood. Yeah.
It's really a destination too. It's one of those places where if you are a bibliophile and you visit Los Angeles, this is one of those hidden gems that you should uncover because, again, like we were saying, there's not a lot of places like this left in the world.
It does genuinely surprise people every day. We hear it every day. People are just stunned by what it is. They had no idea it was there. They've heard about it for years or driven by it and never stopped in. It's much bigger than people expect. We've got a great selection. It's just a really fun place.
So tell us what we can expect from you next then. What are you working on right now, and how fast are these novellas going to come out? So if people buy The Fat Lady Sings, how soon until the next one and the next one?
Monthly, approximately. We're going to get them out as quick as we can. They are complete, except for the last one, so it's still slightly in progress, so I do know where it's going. It does have a definite end that it's coming to. But yeah, they're going to be out just about every month.
Fantastic. And I'd love to touch a little bit more on the magic that you have in your books. You mentioned it before. Where do you get the ideas for the magic? Is that based on magic that you find in literature, in legends? Do you talk to magicians? Do you talk to people who actually practice it in your research?
I do talk to magicians and people who actually practice it in my research. It's we have a great occult section in the bookstore, amongst other things. We actually trade in occult books, so we get a lot of informed and genuine practitioners in there. So their input is always valuable to me. The magic comes out of a lot of places. It's always been a source of fascination to me, so it's something I've done a lot of reading on over the years, both directly as research and just indirectly because it fascinates me. It is based on a lot of classical myth. I'm interested in the way that the Greeks interacted with their gods and the assumptions they made about them. It's also inspired by literature. It's like I said, Stephen King is a perennial favorite in his Dark Tower series. Was definitely influential on my decision to create an entire interlinked world.
And the nice thing too about living in Los Angeles is, I swear, you can walk down the street and you're going to bump into a magician because we have the Magic Castle here. And it seems like, right? Like Los Angeles is a mecca for people who practice magic and do tricks, which is just a really fun.
Both the stage magicians and the cult magicians. We get them both. A lot of them here in LA.
So tell us, where can people find you, find your books? Are you on social media? Where can they go to shop for your books?
I am on social media. I'm on at Sean Patrick Traver on Facebook. Same thing on Instagram. It's ST Traver on Twitter. You can always find me at the Iliad. My books are on the shelf there if you happen to be in North Hollywood. Otherwise, you can go to my website, which is SeanPatrickTraver.com, or you can find me on Amazon.
And with the holidays coming up too, and the fact that this is a series that so many different types of people are going to love. I think that your books make great gifts as well, great stocking stuffers or Hanukkah presents. Who would you recommend if somebody is thinking of buying some books for the holidays? Like who is the target audience? Who would somebody buy your books for?
If you know somebody who's a fan of Stephen King or Neil Gaiman particularly, I think fans of the Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman might particularly enjoy Bruja Chica, the new series of novellas. People who enjoy Jim Butcher might be into them. There's a mystery element, especially there's Dexter Graves is an undead private eye and Graves fan. People who are interested in Los Angeles history, people who are interested in silent film, Ingrid is a silent film star. But Neil Gaiman and Stephen King are two of my perennial favorites, and that influence is never far from the kind of thing I'm doing. If you enjoy them, I think you'll like what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. And it shows that those are influences of yours. And the nice thing about King and Gaiman and everything that you just mentioned is that covers a lot of different types of people, young and old and people with various interests. So this is something that if you want to give the book lover on your list something and you're kind of worried that you might not buy them what they like, this covers a lot of territory.
I like to hope so. Yeah, I do like that. Yeah, I like to think so. I like to think that my characters have a multiplicity of viewpoints. Like in the Fat Lady Sings, one character is a 15-year-old orphan, and the other character is a 170-year-old ghost. So they've got a wide perspective to draw from between the two of them.
All ages, definitely.
Exactly. Maybe not from 15 to 170.
Sean, and that covers just about everybody.
Yeah.
Sean, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. I enjoyed having you on the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to be here.
And once again, hit us with your website so people can find you.
My website is SeanPatrickTraver.com. It's the same thing on Facebook and Instagram, or ST Traver on Twitter.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Once again, my name is Desiree Duffy. Thank you for being with us today on Books That Make You. And you can find out more about Books That Make You on the website. That's booksthatmakeyou.com. And you can also follow us on Facebook and on Instagram, too. Until next time, enjoy all the books that make you who you are and stay positive here on MyStar95.com with music for the soul.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.